What happens when the prophet of raw power meets the psychologist of hidden depths? Imagine Nietzsche, the firebrand philosopher who declared that God is dead and demanded that humanity rise to create its own destiny. He was a storm, tearing down illusions, breaking chains, calling us to reject weakness and embrace struggle. For him, strength meant forging meaning in a world stripped bare. Now, place across from him Carl Jung, the explorer of the soul, the man who believed that the human psyche was a universe of its own. Jung didn't speak in storms, but in shadows. He told us that the danger isn't only outside in collapsing traditions, it's inside, buried in the parts of ourselves we deny. Two voices, two visions, both terrifying in their clarity. Nietzsche screams, "Rise above. Become more than human." Jung warns, "Beware. The parts you refuse to face will rise against you." This isn't just a meeting of two thinkers. It's a clash between fire and depth, rebellion and reflection, the will to break and the need to heal. Nietzsche dares us to stare into the chaos of existence without blinking. Jung dares us to turn inward, into the chaos of our own souls, and not run away. And here's the impossible confrontation. Can you truly embrace Nietzsche's call to power without falling victim to the shadows Jung describes? Can you shatter the world's illusions without first confronting your own? This is where the conversation begins, not in harmony, but in tension. A tension that could change the way we think about strength, truth, and what it means to be human. Nietzsche demands rebellion. Jung demands reflection. And when these two demands collide, the ground beneath us begins to crack. Nietzsche's voice is a battle cry. He looks at a world built on traditions, religions, and morals, and he smashes them with a hammer. His command is simple. Do not obey. Do not submit. Tear down the false gods and stand in the chaos without flinching. For Nietzsche, rebellion isn't just an act of defiance. It's the birth of freedom. Only by rejecting what binds us can we rise beyond the herd. But Jung steps forward with a warning. Rebellion, he says, doesn't only destroy the outer world, it shakes the inner one too. You may kill the gods of culture, but in doing so you awaken something else. The shadows inside you, the fears you repress, the impulses you deny, the truths you hide from yourself. Jung's demand is different. Do not simply fight the world. First, face your own soul. Here lies the inevitable collision. Nietzsche pushes us to shatter boundaries. Jung pushes us to integrate them. One burns, the other heals. One demands we rise beyond, the other that we dive within. But both refuse comfort. Both refuse illusion. And so the tension sharpens. If rebellion without reflection becomes destruction, and reflection without rebellion becomes paralysis, what happens when the two collide? This is the stage we step onto. A battlefield of ideas, where the fire of Nietzsche meets the depth of Jung. And it is here, in this clash, that the meaning of strength, freedom, and humanity itself will be tested. Nietzsche didn't whisper. He thundered. His message was not gentle guidance, but a strike of lightning. The old gods are dead. By gods, Nietzsche didn't only mean religion. He meant every illusion that humans cling to, morality handed down as unquestionable law, traditions that suffocate rather than liberate, comforts that dull the edge of life. He saw these as chains disguised as blessings, and his challenge was brutal. If you want to live fully, you must shatter them. But here's the terrifying part. Nietzsche didn't replace them with new commandments. He left you standing in the rubble, facing the abyss of freedom. Without the old gods, there is no ready-made meaning, no guarantee of safety. You are forced to create, to carve meaning out of chaos with your own hands. This was Nietzsche's fire. He called on us to stop obeying what no longer serves, to stop hiding behind excuses, to stop numbing ourselves with comfort. Because, to him, Comfort was not peace, it was decay. Morality was not truth, it was obedience. And illusions, no matter how beautiful, were lies. His challenge is as alive today as ever. Will you keep worshiping the false gods of security, approval, and ease? Or will you dare to face the void and build yourself anew? For Nietzsche, strength was never about preserving the old, polishing what's already there, or maintaining the status quo. Strength, to him, was violent, raw, and alive. It meant the courage to destroy what is weak, false, and stagnant. And then the even greater courage to create something new in its place. He believed life itself was a cycle of tearing down and building up. The weak cling to comfort, to rules, to systems that keep them safe. The strong, they break them, not for chaos, not for cruelty, but for the possibility of transformation. Out of ruins, they create values that belong to them, not values borrowed from others. This is the heartbeat of Nietzsche's vision. Destruction without creation is emptiness. Creation without destruction is shallow. True strength is holding both, the will to burn what no longer serves you, and the will to invent meaning where none exists. In his eyes, humanity's greatest task was to rise beyond itself, to become more than what history, morality, or fear had shaped it to be. And the only way forward was through fire, destroying illusions, breaking chains, and daring to create. For Nietzsche, strength was not comfort, not survival, not peace. It was the power to say, I will build my life, even if I must first burn the ground beneath me. Jung steps in with a warning. Yes, rebellion breaks chains, but it also tears open the human soul. When you kill gods, you don't just free yourself. You awaken the shadows those gods once held back. For Jung, morality, tradition, even myths weren't just cages. They were also containers, fragile vessels that kept the chaos of the unconscious in check. Destroy them recklessly, and the darkness they suppressed doesn't vanish. It rises. It takes shape inside us. It consumes us. This was his great interruption to Nietzsche's fire. Strength, Jung argued, isn't just the courage to rebel. It's the courage to face what rebellion unleashes, the shadows of desire, fear, and rage that lurk beneath the surface of every human being. Without integrating them, destruction becomes self-destruction. So while Nietzsche saw liberation in smashing illusions, Jung saw danger, a soul unprepared for its own depths. Break the gods, and you may find yourself ruled not by freedom, but by forces darker than any authority you thought you escaped. For Jung, the real question wasn't only, what will you destroy? It was, can you handle what awakens when the old gods fall silent? Jung's warning cuts deep. Freedom is not always what it seems. You can throw off every chain, walk away from every authority, and still end up enslaved, not by the world, but by yourself. Why? Because the human mind isn't just reason and light. It's filled with shadows, impulses, fears, and desires we push down and deny. When outer structures collapse, those shadows rise unchecked. Freedom outside can quickly become chaos inside. Nietzsche celebrated the death of old gods as liberation. But Jung asked, what happens when those gods vanish? The very structures that once gave order, morality, myth, tradition, might have been cages, yes. But they also held back forces most people are too fragile to face. Tear them down without preparation, and instead of strength, you awaken storms within your own psyche. This was Jung's psychological warning. Liberation without integration is a trap. If you don't know your own depths, freedom can drown you. Nietzsche's vision of strength wasn't soft. It was brutal. He told us, if you stare long enough into the abyss stares back. And yet, that is exactly what he demanded. to face the void, the terrifying emptiness of a world without divine order, without guarantees, without meaning written in stone, and not collapse. For Nietzsche, this was the test of the strong, to look directly at the chaos of existence and still say yes to life. No excuses, no illusions, no running back to the safety of old gods. To him, the abyss wasn't meant to be avoided. It was meant to be endured, even embraced. Most people shrink away from that void, filling it with distractions, traditions, or false comforts. But Nietzsche's challenge was different. True strength is found when you strip everything away and refuse to look away. The abyss is merciless, but surviving its gaze proves you are unbroken. This was his demand, a courage so fierce that even nothingness cannot shake it. Jung, the shadow as the abyss within. For Nietzsche, the abyss was outside, the void of a godless universe. But for Jung, the abyss wasn't out there. It was within. He called it the shadow, the hidden, denied parts of ourselves, the rage we refuse to admit, the fears we bury, the desires we call unacceptable, all of it pushed down, locked away, but never gone. Jung warned, the more we deny these forces, the stronger they grow in the dark. We think we've escaped them, but they shape our choices, sabotage our discipline, and twist our lives from underneath. Facing the shadow, then, is just as terrifying as staring into Nietzsche's abyss, because it means confronting what we fear most. Not the emptiness of the universe, but the truth of who we are. To Jung, true strength wasn't only about surviving the world's chaos. It was about turning inward, daring to face the chaos we carry inside. And if Nietzsche demanded courage before nothingness, Jung demanded courage before the self. For Nietzsche, to be human was never the final goal. Humanity, as it exists, was weak, chained by morality, comfort, and fear. He called it the herd, a mass of people clinging to old gods and safe routines. But Nietzsche's vision cut deeper. Strength meant rising above the herd, not being swallowed by it. The one who breaks free becomes something new, the Übermensch, the overman. The Übermensch doesn't accept inherited truths. He creates values where old ones have collapsed. He writes his own laws, lives with raw vitality, and transforms suffering into power. For Nietzsche, this was the ultimate test of strength. Not obedience, not survival, but transcendence. To look at a broken world and refuse to bow. To create meaning where none exists. The Übermensch is not just more powerful, he is more human than humanity has ever dared to be. A figure who stands alone, unafraid, and free. For Jung, becoming more than human didn't mean rising above others. It meant facing yourself, all of yourself. He called it individuation, the lifelong process of uniting the fragments of the psyche, the conscious self, the unconscious drives, the shadow, even the archetypes buried deep in the collective unconscious. Jung saw most people as divided within. We wear masks to survive, deny what we don't like about ourselves, and bury the impulses we fear. But strength to Jung was not pretending these parts don't exist. It was bringing them into the light. Individuation is not about perfection. It's about wholeness. It's about knowing your shadow, your desires, your wounds, and weaving them together into one self that is authentic and alive. Where Nietzsche's Übermensch sought greatness through creation, Jung's individuated self found greatness through integration. It's not domination, but reconciliation, not rising above humanity, but becoming fully human. For Jung, that was the true road beyond. Not escape, not rebellion, but wholeness. For Nietzsche, morality wasn't sacred, it was strategy. He argued that traditional morality, humility, obedience, self-denial, was not born from strength, but from weakness. It was the weapon of the powerless, a clever way for the herd to restrain the strong. Think about it. The virtues society praises most are the ones that keep people small. Be humble. Be obedient. Don't question. Don't rise too high. And Nietzsche saw this not as divine truth, but as a mask, a system built to tame the human will, to keep power chained. To him, morality was never neutral. It was always about control. And when the weak elevate their values above the strong, what you get is not balance, but resentment disguised as virtue. This is why Nietzsche urged us to tear off the mask, to ask, whose morality am I living by? Mine or the herd's? For Nietzsche, true strength meant creating values of your own, even if the world calls it rebellion. Jung didn't see morality as a weapon the way Nietzsche did, but he agreed that society forces us into disguises. He called it the persona, the mask we wear to survive in the world. From the moment we're children, we learn what's acceptable, what's praised, and what's punished. Slowly, we craft a version of ourselves that fits. We smile when we're supposed to, hide what feels dangerous, and bury the parts of us that don't match the script. The persona helps us function. It keeps us safe, but it also traps us. Over time, the mask hardens, and we begin to confuse it for who we really are. The authentic self, wild, conflicted, alive, gets suffocated underneath. For Jung, this wasn't just about society's rules. It was about survival. But the cost is high. When we live only through masks, we lose touch with our deepest self. And here's where Nietzsche and Jung unexpectedly meet. Nietzsche tore away illusions of morality. Jung tore away the illusions of identity. Both were asking the same question. Are you living as yourself or as the mask the world demands? Nietzsche's vision of eternity is not gentle, not comforting. He asks a terrifying question. What if you had to live this exact life? Every choice, every mistake, every joy over and over again for eternity. No rewinds, no edits, no escape. This is the challenge of eternal recurrence. Imagine a voice whispering in your ear. Would you still choose this life if you knew you'd have to relive it forever? For Nietzsche, this was the ultimate test of strength. True power is not just surviving life, but affirming it completely. Saying yes to all of it. The pain, the beauty, the failures, the triumphs. To embrace life so fully that even eternal repetition becomes bearable, even glorious. Most people, he believed, would shrink back in horror. But the strong, the ones who can transform suffering into meaning, would face this thought experiment and answer, yes. Again and again, yes. Nietzsche's eternity is not a promise of heaven. It's a demand to live now in a way you could endure forever. For Jung, eternity wasn't about repeating your life forever. It was about something deeper, something beneath the surface of every mind. He called it the collective unconscious, timeless patterns, ancient images, and archetypes that shape every human being across history. The hero, the shadow, the mother, the trickster. These are not just myths or stories. They live inside us, influencing our choices, our fears, and our dreams, whether we realize it or not. Jung believed that each of us is part of this vast tapestry. When you struggle, you are replaying struggles older than time. When you grow, you are stepping into patterns written long before you were born. This is his vision of eternity, not living the same life again and again, but being bound to the timeless structures of human existence. The inner scripts that repeat through every generation. Both Jung and Nietzsche force us to face the infinite. For Nietzsche, it's the endless return of your own life. For Jung, it's the eternal currents of the human soul. Either way, eternity is unavoidable. The question is, Will you face it with fear or with understanding? So what is strength, really? Nietzsche tells us it's rebellion, the courage to break chains, to defy authority, to carve out new values, even when the world resists. Jung replies, strength is not in breaking, but in integrating. It is the quiet, relentless work of bringing together all the pieces of who we are, even the ones we fear. At first, these visions look like opposites. One is fire, the other is depth. One destroys, the other heals. But maybe the truth lies in the tension between them, because rebellion without integration turns into chaos, and integration without rebellion collapses into conformity. Strength is not choosing one road, but holding the fire of Nietzsche in one hand and the depth of Jung in the other. It's the paradox of being human, to rise above what limits us, while also facing what hides within us, to stand tall in defiance, yet also kneel before our own shadow. Strength redefined is not dominance, not perfection, not control. It's the courage to wrestle with life and with yourself, without running from either. What if strength isn't about choosing Nietzsche over Jung, or Jung over Nietzsche, but about refusing to let go of either? Nietzsche's fire burns with intensity. It demands rebellion, risk, and creation. It whispers, dare to rise above the herd, dare to shape the world with your will. His vision pushes us into greatness, but it can also consume us if it becomes only destruction. Jung's depth moves in the opposite direction. It doesn't shout, it listens. It tells us, go inward. Face the shadows you deny. Heal the fractures inside your soul. His vision grounds us. But it can also trap us in endless reflection if it becomes only silence. But together, fire and depth, rebellion and reflection, they create a new definition of strength. One that refuses illusions, yet does not collapse into despair. One that dares to create, yet does not forget to heal. True strength may not be about winning, controlling, or even transcending. It may be about holding this impossible tension, to burn with fire without being destroyed, and to sink into depth without being drowned. That balance is brutal, terrifying, and rare. But maybe it is the only strength that endures. So when Jung questions Nietzsche, what do we truly uncover? Do we glimpse a higher truth, a synthesis that rises above both? Or do we meet the cold reality that no single path can be chosen without sacrifice? Nietzsche tells us to burn the world of false values and step into raw, unfiltered life. Jung warns us that in burning, we may awaken demons we can't control. One calls us to transcend, the other calls us to integrate. One says, become more than human. The other says, become fully human. And perhaps this is the brutal choice. Do we reach for power at the cost of our soul, or reach for wholeness at the cost of the fire that drives us forward? Maybe there is no easy answer. Maybe strength is forged in the tension, in refusing to resolve what cannot be resolved. So I leave you with this question. When Jung questions Nietzsche, do we discover a hidden truth about strength and the human condition? Or only the impossibility of ever walking a single road? If this clash of ideas made you pause, if it stirred something in you, then this is just the beginning. Nietzsche and Jung don't give us answers. They give us questions that keep burning. And that's what this channel is about. Chasing the questions that can shake your view of reality, strength, and the self. So, if you want more of these deep dives into the minds that still haunt and guide us, hit subscribe. Not as a click, but as a choice, a step into the uncomfortable space where real growth begins. The next idea might not just change how you think, it might change who you are.